Welcome to the TOEFL Podcast, Episode 6. This is Episode 6 of the TOEFL Podcast for those studying for the test of English as a foreign language, or the TOEIC exam, or the IELTS exam, or for those who just want to improve their English. My name is Dr. Jeff McQuillan from the Center for Educational Development in Los Angeles, California. As usual, we will begin with a dialogue read at a slow speed, an explanation of the dialogue at a fast speed, and a comprehension question. Today we will listen to a conversation between a student and a professor about asking for an extension on an assignment. Let's get started. Professor Eng, could I speak to you for a minute?
What can I do for you?
Well, it's about the paper that's due on Thursday. I was wondering if I could get an extension.
I don't give extensions unless there's a very good reason.
Well, you see, I've been sick and haven't been able to do the library research I need for the paper.
This paper was assigned at the beginning of the semester, so you've known about it for 6 weeks. I purposely give students plenty of notice so that they can budget their time accordingly. I understand that you've been sick, but I can't give you an extension because you've procrastinated.
I didn't wait until the last minute to do the assignment. I started researching my topic weeks ago. In fact, I've already written a rough draft of the body of the paper, but I need a couple more sources for the conclusion.
I'll tell you what. If you can get a note from your doctor, I'll give you an extra few days. Otherwise, it'll still be due on Thursday.
Okay, I understand. Thanks anyway. I'll try to get it done by Thursday. Now let's talk about some of the expressions used in this dialogue. The student begins by telling the professor or saying to the professor, Professor Eng, could I speak to you for a minute? This is a polite way of asking someone for a favor. Could I speak to you? You're asking if they have time right now for you to talk to them. The professor says, sure. What can I do for you? And the student says, it's about the paper that's due on Thursday. The paper here refers not to the newspaper, but to a report or research paper that you have to hand in or give to the professor. Most classes in the university, of course, require you to write sometimes 5, 10, 20 pages of reporting on a certain topic, and that's called a paper. The paper is due on Thursday. DUE means it has to be handed in or given to the professor on Thursday. The student then says, I was wondering if I can get an extension. That is another very polite expression, a good one to know. I was wondering if. You're asking someone a question, but you are doing it in a polite way. Instead of saying, can I get an extension? It's more formal, a little more polite to say, I was wondering if I could get an extension. Now notice when we use this format, I was wondering if, the verb and the subject changes in the second part. In a normal question, can I get an extension? The can becomes first, the helping verb, and the I, the subject, comes second. Can I? But when you use an expression like, I was wondering if, the question is what we call embedded, so it switches around. I was wondering if I could or I can get an extension. Subject first, and then the helping verb. An extension in the university for a paper would be more time to finish the project. So if it was due on Thursday, you ask for an extension for 1 week, then it would be due the following Thursday. The professor doesn't really want to give an extension to the student, and the student says, well, I've been sick. This is what we call an excuse. And it's a reason why you haven't done something, an excuse. And the student says that he hasn't been able to do the library research, meaning he hasn't been able to go to the library, investigate his topic, and so forth. The professor reminds the student that she gives students plenty of notice so they can budget their time accordingly. To give someone plenty or a lot of notice means that you are telling them in advance. Usually this relates to a deadline or when something is due. If you have to, for example, hand in a paper at the end of the semester, the professor tells you 2 months before what you should put in your paper. That's giving you plenty of notice because now you have 2 months to finish your paper. Of course, you'll wait until the night before you have to hand it in to do it, but the professor gave you plenty of notice, plenty of time. They told you ahead of time. To budget your time accordingly is an expression which means use your time wisely, schedule your time intelligently. To budget your time means to decide how much time you're going to spend on this, how much time you're going to spend on that. Budget, B-U-D-G-E-T, normally refers to how much money we are going to spend on a project. But when we say budget your time, we're talking about how much time you're going to spend on each part of a project. So budget your time accordingly, meaning give the things that need time the amount of time required. The professor says that she doesn't want to give an extension because she thinks this student has procrastinated. To procrastinate, P-R-O-C-R-A-S-T-I-N-A-T-E, to procrastinate, means to wait to the last minute. Instead of doing your paper 2 weeks in advance, you wait until midnight, the night before it is due to be handed in, to start working on it. This would be to procrastinate. Some students like to procrastinate. The student says, no, that's not what happened. I didn't wait until the last minute. To wait until the last minute means to wait until the last possible time to finish a project. And that's an expression you'll hear, a common expression. Don't wait until the last minute. Means make sure that you finish it in advance. The student says that, in fact, he has already written a rough draft of the body of the paper. A draft of a paper, D-R-A-F-T, is an attempt at writing the paper. And usually you write something down, you type something in your computer, maybe a page or two, and then the next day you come back and you'll change this and you'll move this paragraph and you'll add something to this sentence. and that would be your second draft. And each time you work on it, it's a different, it changes. Hopefully it becomes better. All of those attempts to write the paper are called rough drafts. The opposite of a rough draft, or after you finish your rough drafts, you have the final draft, and that's what you're going to give to the professor. So a draft here is an attempt or a version of your paper. And the student is saying they already have a rough draft of the body of the paper. The body of the paper is the main section of the paper. So a paper would have an introduction, an essay would have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. The body is the main points that you are going to use in the paper. The student says they need a couple of more sources for the conclusion. Well, conclusion is the end of the paper where you summarize things. Sources are books or articles, sometimes people that you talk to, that give you information for the paper. And usually when you have sources for your paper, you have to cite the sources, C-I-T-E. To cite your sources means to say where you got this information. Usually on the bottom of the page, in what we would call a footnote. That's the notes that go on the bottom of a page, or rather an end note, all one word, footnote and end note. The end notes go at the end of the page, of the paper, I'm sorry. Finally, the professor says, well, if you can get a note from your doctor, I'll give you an extension. This is, again, a common expression you'll hear in school. A note from your doctor means a piece of paper from your doctor saying, yes, this person really was sick. This is, believe it or not, somewhat common in many schools because many students, believe it or not, don't always tell the truth about whether they are sick or not. And so many professors require proof. Well, show me a note from your doctor. Now let's listen to the dialogue again, this time at a native, faster rate of speech. Professor Eng, could I speak to you for a minute?
What can I do for you?
Well, it's about the paper that's due on Thursday. I was wondering if I could get an extension.
I don't give extensions unless there's a very good reason.
Well, you see, I've been sick and haven't been able to do the library research I need for the paper.
This paper was assigned at the beginning of the semester, so you've known about it for 6 weeks. I purposely give students plenty of notice so that they can budget their time accordingly. I understand that you've been sick, but I can't give you an extension because you've procrastinated.
I didn't wait until the last minute to do the assignment. I started researching my topic weeks ago. In fact, I've already written a rough draft of the body of the paper. But I need a couple more sources for the conclusion.
I'll tell you what. If you can get a note from your doctor, I'll give you an extra few days. Otherwise, it'll still be due on Thursday.
Okay, I understand. Thanks anyway. I'll try to get it done by Thursday. Now let's ask a couple of comprehension questions about this dialogue. Why did the student want more time to finish his paper? A, he needs money for his tuition. B, he wants to write a rough draft of the paper. C, he needs to see his doctor. Or D, he needs to do more library research. The correct answer is D, he needs to do more library research. Notice that the wrong answers all make some mention of a topic that was included in the dialogue. And this is a common way that TOEFL tries to trick you to get you to pick the wrong answer. The first answer, he needs money for his tuition. Well, if you heard budget, you might have been thinking about money. But of course, budget your time has a different meaning. The student mentioned about writing a rough draft, but that's not why he needs an extension. He already wrote a rough draft. He doesn't need to see his doctor, at least that's not why he wants an extension. And finally, the correct answer, he needs to do more library research, mentioned in the first part of the dialogue. Let's try another one. What does the professor tell the student to do in order to get an extension? A. Finish his rough draft. B. Get proof of his illness. C. Wait until the last minute. Or D. Go to the library to do research. The correct answer is B. Get proof of his illness. Again, some of the wrong answers mention things that were also mentioned in the dialogue, such as finishing a rough draft. But the way that the student can get an extension is if he gets proof. And that's what the expression, get a note from your doctor, means. That's going to do it for today's TOEFL podcast. Remember, we have another podcast, a daily podcast, that you can listen to, which will help you improve your English. It's called English as a Second Language Podcast. Go to the website, www.TOEFLPod.com. That's TOEFLPod.com. And you'll see a link to our other podcast. From Los Angeles, California, I'm Dr. Jeff McQuillan. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on the TOEFL podcast. TOEFL Podcast is a production of the Center for Educational Development in Los Angeles, California. Copyright 2005. TOEFL is a registered trademark of the Educational Testing Service, which does not endorse and was not involved in the production of this podcast.